Some sports books peg him as a favorite or near the favorite. Can Tyrese Haliburton win Most Improved Player this year? Will he be an All-Star? How many All-Stars can Tyrese Haliburton get in his career? We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News. And today, after my first weekday off in like a year, we're back talking Tyrese Haliburton. And a lot to come with his season, his awards case, his trophy closet, whatever you want to call it. A lot of sportsbooks say he could win Most Improved Player. A lot of historic stats I've been digging up suggest he could be an All-Star very soon rather than later. And I want to dig into all that today with Tyler Smith from Indy Sports Legends, been on the Pacers beat as long as I've been there, way longer, in fact, has seen multiple Most Improved Players roll through Indy. Tyler, how you doing? How's your summer? How's an August without the NBA? I forgot what this is like.
Yeah, I'm good, Tony. Thanks for having me. I am enjoying summer, but I'm also looking forward to the craze of basketball season, here in just a few months.
As am I. It's going to be a fun one. It seems like, especially last year, a lot of teams in the NBA are going for it right now, which is always a good time. You never really know who's going to win, and that always makes the NBA more fun. Today, we're talking about a team that does not want to, does not going to be in that mix, but a player who could lead them there in Tyrese Haliburton. And I want to start with the all-star side of this discussion because I brought this up on a podcast a few weeks ago, and I really want to dig into these numbers now. So I'm going to start with a 45-second rant about stats and history and all-stars, and then we'll talk about Tyrese Haliburton in his case. So, Tyler, here are all 8 seasons in NBA history where a player in their first 4 seasons, not their first 2, their first 4 seasons has scored 15 points per game, had 8 assists per game, and shot over 38% from 3 in a season. That would be Mark Price twice in his 3rd and 4th seasons, Darren Williams in his 3rd season, Trae Young this past season, Tim Hardaway in his rookie season, Tyrese Haliburton this past season, Darius Garland this past season, and Damon Stoudemire in his Rookie of the Year season. You know what's interesting about every player I just named? They were all All-Stars several times in their career, except for Damon Stoudemire, who won Rookie of the Year, was a ho-hum 20 points a game scorer for the next half-decade before his career completely changed. So a lot of that suggests to me that Haliburton is headed down that path. He's got a combination of skills early in his career that is really rare for guys to have. And that's why I think it's possible, and I'm curious if you agree, that he could be an All-Star sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. I agree. There's so many crazy stats just in his first couple of years, especially those 26 games or so as a Pacer. So I wasn't too surprised when you were kind of naming off those names and including him in that list. But as far as, this coming season, I think there's obviously a chance the Pacers might get a little overlooked, not being on TV as much. Cue Roy Hibbert quote here, and just kind of how they're looked maybe outside looking in the playoffs. But it really depends on a lot of factors. There's a lot of guys. I was trying to look at some other guys from this past year that played his position that made the All-Star team and their numbers. And I think he's going to be really close, but I can say with a lot of certainty, as far as my belief, that he's going to have multiple All-Star appearances as a Pacer. I think he's going to be here a long time. He's going to make the All-Star game several times. Whether that happens right away this coming season, we'll have to see, but I think he's definitely got a shot.
DeJounte Murray made it last year as a 21-9 guy. Now, he was also an awesome defender, led the league in steals, I think. So I think he can reach those offensive numbers. I don't think he can reach the defensive impact, and we'll talk about that. And the Spurs were at least okay last year. They made the play-in, which these will all be factors. But I do agree with everything you just said, that there will be a lot that goes into it beyond just the numbers that I think will be a big part of it. That's what I thought was interesting about, kind of Mark Price and his case as it grew. Like, the Cavs were not that good right when his career started, but once he got better, and naturally the team gets better when you get better, his second year they were a 500 team, and he was not an All-Star despite being a 16-6 guy who shot 49% from 3. The next year they win 57 games. His stats get a little better. Boom, he's in the game. Winning was a big factor there, and we'll talk about that. in the case for Haliburton here in a second. But I do think that there are ways he could get there, and it's not like far fetched to say the lower end All Stars from last year he could reach their level of stats. But I think there's a couple things I want to talk about here. What he needs to improve to get there, to get to that level, because he wasn't quite there last year. And I think there are some little tiny things that could get him there. And I think the first one I'm talking about is assertiveness and aggressiveness. I think not having Brogdon on the team anymore will allow him to do that, but he doesn't hunt for his shot very much. If he wants to get the scoring numbers up a little bit, or at least more comfortably to a place that he can be in those conversations, I think he needs to look for his shot slightly more throughout the course of a game.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder if the month of April was a little bit of a preview. He was shooting a little more. Obviously, the trades had taken place, and he was averaging about 21-9 in April. I also remember the first handful of games. I think it was 7 or 8 games that he played without Brogdon. He's getting these 21 points, 10 assists kind of numbers. Brogdon plays with him for a while, and he's getting more in the 14 and 8 or 9 range. Definitely not taking as many shot attempts, but I agree with you. If he even mentioned in an interview recently that he's a pass first guard still, and that's fine, but as long as he's looking for his spots. And I think if maybe that number 20 points a game is what he's going to need to get to, because I think we can agree the assists are going to be there. So can he get to the scoring total of a Darius Garland type? I was thinking of Fred VanVleet, those kind of guys that I feel like made the All-Star team. I believe that he can probably surpass as far as total numbers go. So then you got to factor in rookies and breakout players and all these other factors that come with it. But I think if he can get to that 20, which is his goal, and we've seen him do it also in Sacramento when Fox was out. We saw him. He's got a track record of when he's the main guy putting up those big numbers.
I think he should be pass first given his skill set. Like that's a good trait, and I think that's important for the Pacers in general. That will help the other players on this team get better faster and be good faster. That's all good. But I do think there's an element of dude, you are one of the best pull-up shooters in the league. You shoot 40% from 3 your first 2 years with the shot diet he has. Not a lot of catch and shoot. There's some, but not a ton. I mean, that bodes really well. The percent of his threes that are assisted, at least with the Pacers this past season, somehow I don't know how to read charts anymore, below 60%, right? That is crazy low. He takes a lot of pull-up threes, and he still hits over 40% his first 2 years. That is super impressive. And I think when you have that skill set, hunt your shot a tiny bit more. You can make it from everywhere. And I use 38% as my cutoff for this. That had research I showed at the beginning. He's over 40 both of his seasons. I think when I did it at 40 at first, Mark Price was the only guy on the list besides Tyrese Haliburton. He has a skill set where hunting his own shot makes some sense. Adding to his game in that way would be valuable. The other key thing, and this is where I think a lot of the separation for guys like you mentioned VanVleet, guys like DeJounte Murray, who I said earlier, the biggest separation is he's got to be a better defender. I think that is the obvious weak point in his game, and the clearly biggest thing holding him back from being, oh wow, this is a dude, this is a leader, this guy can alone basically get a team to a 500 floor.
Yeah, I agree. I was kind of looking at some of them. Obviously, it's most of the offensive numbers, but he's in the 90 to 99 percentile in so many incredible stats. I mean, I find more every time I look it up, but just the percentage, pick and roll ball handling, effective field goal percentage, spot up jumpers, as you mentioned. So all those numbers are going to be there. And I think even if the Pacers are not winning many games, he's going to get recognition for that. So I agree with you that if he can even have moments of kind of lockdown defense and, get into the eyes of the people making those decisions, it's going to help him out.
I don't even think that he has to be lockdown level. Just hit league average, and I think he'll reach the conversations. I think he was pretty clearly a negative defender with the Pacers this past season. Now the problem I have with evaluating Pacers defenders for the last 26 games of the last season when they had Tyrese Haliburton is they were all terrible, and it was so easy for other teams to score that you could push blame on possibly 3 suspects every single possession they gave up a bucket. But he was a lot of times one of those suspects. I would not consider his defense a strong point for him at this point of his career. And I think a lot of times I bring this comparison up a lot. So forgive me if you've heard this before, listener, but Ben Simmons, when I talk about him, when he came into the NBA, he was a good defensive prospect already, but guys who he could read the game really well. And once that clicked for him on the defensive end, he became a really good defender. And a lot of those guys who see the floor really well, who understand the patterns, who can throw guys open, can see options 2, 3, and 4 in every pick and roll, eventually that translates to defense, even if they're not always fully engaged or in the right spots. At some point, eventually, Tyrese Haliburton will be a very good, at least team defender. So he's got to get better at the on-ball stuff. I think that might even take some time at his size in general. But I think that is where the biggest leap for him will need to come. And he is 6'5", but he's a little skinny for that size, for him to reach that all-star echelon. And I think he could reach it multiple times. We'll talk about that at the end. But if he gets that defense in the door, I think that can be the thing that takes him to that all-star level, like by default, and gets him into that most improved player conversation.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be fun to see, and there's still a lot of unknowns that we have about the roster. Once again, will Miles Turner be there? How's it going to work with some young guys beside him? Hopefully Duarte can also take a step up defensively, but you got Mathurin in there, and I think it's going to be a learning curve for everybody, but hopefully with a little bit of direction of where they're going and some clarity about what they're doing. Hopefully that'll help on both sides of the ball. Because really, even when the Pacers were good the last couple of years, it's been kind of like, whose team is this? Is it got the Turbonis thing you got for a time period? It was TJ Warren's team, and of course Oladipo before that. Now there's no mistaking whose team it is. So hopefully he can be the floor general on both ends, and hopefully the coaching staff can also kind of nail down how these lineups, there could be a lot of them, how they can mix and match, and it starts with him on the defensive end as well.
Hey guys, let's take one short little break here so I can talk to you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. You can find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games at BetOnline.net. They have reviews and news for every major league, including baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, golf, you name it. They got it. And BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They've got you covered. They have Colts lines up for their first 10 games or something. Their opening game against the Texans. They're favored by 8 on the road. You can get all those lines at BetOnline. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about what's happening today at BetOnline.net, because BetOnline is where the game starts. You say it's obvious whose team it is, but if Russell Westbrook's on the roster, I would have to imagine they would change that up. That's a joke for all you listening. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen every day. Let's keep going on this conversation. I'm going to pivot a little to most improved here. An award the Pacers are intimately familiar with. 5 winners since the turn of the century is pretty crazy. Jalen Rose, J.O., Danny Granger, PG, and Vic. What a list. What a fun list of players for this Pacers franchise, and a big part for all of them. This wasn't the only thing. Look, they all got better at a lot in their most improved season, but they all got better at defense. I think that's going to be a key thing. So if you look at some odds makers and who they peg as some of the favorites for most improved, it's a lot of fourth-year guys and stuff like that. A lot of third and fourth-year guys, You got Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett's near the top, and then guys in new positions like Ben Simmons. The obvious usual candidates. Shea's up there as well, though I don't know if the Thunder will be good enough. And then Haliburton's right in that mix. The one I'm looking at right now from Vegas Insider has him second behind just Anthony Edwards, which I think is a really interesting discussion, because what would it take for him to get it? To me, he would have to improve on all the things we've already said. But I think the big factor here, and this could matter in the All-Star discussion too, is the Pacers will have to be good. Like the reason a lot of the guys were able to win before for the Pacers, Rose won the year they reached the finals. J.O. wins the year they returned back to that level of relevance. Danny Granger wins it the year the Pacers finally reach the playoffs again. Paul George reaches it, gets it the year they make the conference finals. Vic gets it the year they almost beat LeBron in the first round. It's clear that winning's a factor, and that's not the only thing. We talked about some of the skill growth as well. But for him to get most improved, I think, the Pacers will have to be at least a 500 team, because Anthony Edwards' team looks like they're going to be awesome, and Jalen Brunson's team's going to be much better. It'll be obvious to point to what those guys did to help their teams in a way that Haliburton will have to be pretty dang good to win the award and make the Pacers substantially better than last year.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe he's got to get him into at least the play-in, but even that, there's so many teams involved making the playoffs these days that it's hard to say that would be the thing that gets them the most recognition, but they definitely can't win 25, 30 games and expect that. But I think Haliburton was already pretty dang good. I mean, obviously, if you take out even, if you look at the overall numbers, he was 15.3 points, 8.2 assists. I just don't know if there's going to be a big enough jump. Maybe, again, that 20-point threshold is the thing. If he jumps from 15 a game to 20 throughout the whole season and the Pacers are competitive, maybe that's what it takes. But It's another one of those things where I don't know if he's going to take a big enough leap, because I think he was already pretty good with those numbers as it was.
Yeah, Brandon Ingram won it 3 years ago. 3 years ago, on a 30-win Pelicans team. And he would be kind of the blueprint to me for Haliburton to win it in a year that they aren't really good. And there were some other good candidates that year, but Ingram was an all-star that year, first of all. That's still his only all-star appearance. But his stat jumps weren't crazy, right? 5 more points per game is a decent amount. 1 more rebound, 1.2 more assists, like a little bit better defensive stats. It's not like things were crazy, but his efficiency and just general like game completeness really improved. And that's sort of a lazy way to describe it, but like it kind of all clicked in a noticeable way where even when he's not impacting a possession because he's right near the play or because he's doing something obvious, he's
because George Niang is my best.
Sorry about that.
Hello, Tyrese. Welcome to the show. You were still seeing him impact the game and help the Pelicans win and be that kind of player. And so that I think is something that Haliburton can do as well. And that's again sort of lazy ways of describing being an impact player, right? Like just being around the play, being impactful when you're not directly involved and stuff like that. But Ingram was able to be like more of a connecting piece, and the Pelicans were still like interesting that year. And he got traded the year before from the Lakers to the Pelicans, which was a factor as well. But hey, Haliburton got traded last year too. So I think there is again a chance if the Pacers are still crummy and only win 30 games this season. But it would take he would have to be an all-star, and he would have to find a way to be, even when he doesn't score or assist on a possession, still be like a force, like he's driving to the basket, and be a useful connecting defensive player right away. But that putting that all together and the Pacers still being bad would be kind of unusual to me. So it seems like it would require them being good or him adding like a whole new skill that I don't see, like a floater or a really impressive finisher this season, which is possible, but not necessarily something that I think Haliburton will get on very quickly.
Yeah, and if you use that example, if he does get 5 more points a game and gets to that 20 and maybe 9 assists, those are the kind of numbers of, pretty significant jump. It's not insignificant for sure, but as far as efficiency goes, he was already, I think, 590 effective field goal percentage. And as a pacer, he was actually really close to the 50, 40, 90. So, I mean, you're talking like trying to improve from those numbers. He shot 85% from the foul line. So he shot over 50 from the field and 40 from three, then 85. So he's really close to, it's just, I don't know how much, again, to win an award like that, is there going to be enough of a jump? We'll have to see, but maybe those overall numbers kind of help that.
Would you like a list of all the people who have averaged 20 and 9 and shot 38% or better from three in a season? Shoot. This is the first 4 seasons of their career. Let me remove that and start again. This is going to be much longer. Never mind. In the first 4 years of their career, the only 2 ever were Tim Hardaway and Trae Young. If you do any season of their career ever, you also add in Kevin Johnson in his age 30 season with the Suns, and Magic Johnson, an all-time legend. Kevin Johnson, 3-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA guy. So if he could be a 20 and 9 guy and shoot really well from three, he'd be the 5th player ever to do that. That seems like a nice little bid to win some awards, which would be interesting in this discussion as well. So I think there is some skill adding to be done for him to reach those numbers, but it is plausible and possible for him to do that. And there's blueprints of guys who have done it before, which is why I think it will be interesting to see how he fits in this discussion. And the Pacers' improvement will be fascinating as well. Like, if they're let's see, is there a way they're like an above 500 team where he isn't an all-star? Like, does anyone else even make sense as like a big jump candidate? Maybe Chris Duarte, but it seems like everybody else either has too many warts or we know what they are enough that doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, that would be a bigger shock than Wilson Contreras not getting traded by the Cubs.
We need more baseball lines in here. It's a good day for the Phillies. I've had a very fun day of tracking baseball. They didn't get Juan Soto, so I suppose they're not the biggest winners. It's going to be a pain dealing with the Padres for the next 10 years. I mean, hey, They are just loaded. It's gross.
I will say this too. I saw a Basketball Reference projection for Haliburton, 16.1 points and 7.9 assists. So I'm going to go ahead and slam over on both of those.
I would definitely take the over on the assists, like easily. He averaged that almost with the Kings last year with playing with Fox. I think there's a chance. I said this last year a few times. If Haliburton plays 80-plus games this season, he could set the franchise assist record. Like that, he's that level of passer. Now, Mark Jackson, the thing is, when Mark Jackson said it, he also played a ton of games, and he, unlike he, unlike Haliburton, was mostly just a setup man. He was not really a scorer. Like the year he
Yeah.
led the league in assists, he averaged less than 10 points per game. And the year he went crazy with the Pacers assists, he averaged over 12 assists per game with the Nuggets before getting traded back to the Pacers. Some of those years where he was getting 700 assists in a season,
Hmm.
he was just all pass all the time and not a scoring threat at all. Whereas Haliburton is. So getting 700 assists, I forget exactly what Jackson's record is with the Pacers. I might not have that number right. It's about 700. I should have pulled that up before I started talking. Haliburton had 628 last year, and he only missed 5 games. That's still a ways to go, but I think it's possible. If he averaged 9 with the Pacers, like if he reaches that 8 or 9 number for 82 games, do the math, he'll get pretty dang close to it. But it's going to be tough.
I also saw that his production actually goes up with minutes played, which is cool. I mean, he's so young. He's only been able to drink for a year. I mean, this guy, we can't forget, like, if he doesn't make the All-Star team or doesn't win Most Improved, it's probably not going to be a failure of a season. He's still going to have a heck of a year, and the Pacers are in good hands with this guy. But I think each time, each threshold of 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 35, 40, every time it goes up, his production went up. So that's a good sign as well for Carlisle and company.
Thanks, everybody, again, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen every single day. Tyler, I've been talking about this theory a lot, and I want you to know if I'm making this up. And I'll probably talk to Tyrese and Jalen and Aaron Nesmith about this when the season starts. But something else that makes me have belief in all three of those guys' growth to a little bit of an extent, but especially Tyrese's, is they got drafted in November of 2020, right? So they've only been in the league for like a year and a half. And they had the weirdest first season and pre-draft process ever, right? They didn't really have a training camp or preseason their first year. They went straight from draft to playing. That's so hard. Like WNBA players deal with that because they go straight from college to playing in the pro season, and it's like impossible. They're taking classes. That's a little different, but still, that's so tough. And then their rookie season ends, and they get like 30 days off, and then boom, they're right back into a normal training camp season. Like, I'll be curious for those players how much a real full off season, working with your teammates, being around a normal NBA setting can help these guys grow. It might not mean anything. In fact, it might have been helpful for them to have it all be rapid fire. Maybe I'm making this up as a growth point for these players, but to me, that's just because it's different. I'll be curious how it impacts their development, and if it could be something where finally they can settle in. Like, for example, we just saw Dave McMenamin from ESPN share, that Tyrese Haliburton's out at the Rico Hines runs at UCLA. Like, Pascal Siakam's there, James Harden's there, like a bunch of NBA studs are there, and Tyrese is playing with those guys. That was not possible during the COVID seasons when he started in the league. Like, I'll be curious how the growth for those 2020 draftees looks this season now that they're entering a normal cycle and a normal offseason, if that accelerates their growth, if it doesn't mean anything. And I think it could be something that they finally settle in and can benefit a little bit from it.
That's a really good point, and I think that the Pacer front office maybe maybe they were ahead of that curve too. Like, let's get as many
betting on that
20 draft choices that we possibly can put on one roster. But yeah, I think not only that, but having the ability as well. I think all the guys that you mentioned, they don't have any like rumors with them anymore. They know what is coming this season, and that can only help as well to again have that clarity of this is the team we're going to be with, and this is what we're building. So. You factor all that in, and there could be good things for those guys.
Who else can the Pacers steal in this 2020 draft during this season if something comes available? If the Miles Turner to Dallas trade ever materializes, maybe they could get Josh Green. I know that was reported for years and years. I haven't heard that one in a while, though. But that's the only one that I see that stands out as something that would happen. So the last note, question, whatever you want to call it, that I typed down for this conversation about Haliburton's upcoming season, actually about his upcoming season. It is more about his whole career. And you actually answered it right at the beginning. So I'll change the tone of the question. Over under 2.5 All-Stars for Tyrese Haliburton in a Pacer uniform.
I'm taking the over. Again, so I was thinking about if I had the opportunity to decide if he was going to make it this year, I wouldn't be completely confident in that because of all the factors, but I would be confident in saying he's going to have over the 2.5, just because I think he's going to be here for minimum 8 to 10 years. And I believe in the player he is, and he's so young, so talented. So I will go over. And I think too, a big thing for him is just the person that he is, like he's a guy that you can't help but trust. I mean, he's very well spoken. He's very driven to go along with the talent. He's a really good dude. And he says his goal is to be in the All-Star game. So he said last year at the Futures game, he said, I'm going to be back. So he's very driven. He's going to put in the work. This year, I could see a scenario where he gets in based on, maybe he doesn't make it initially, but maybe there's an injury and then he becomes the replacement.
Yep.
I think he could be in that range. So he's a replacement and automatically there's one. So it counts on your resume. It's not really I was a replacement. No, he's an all-star. So
No one
that
will
could
remember.
Yeah. But I think I'm gonna take the over on that as well.
Yeah, like I talked about DeJounte earlier being an all-star. Like he was the second replacement too in the West. No one ever will remember that. And like a year from now, no one will remember that. Mike Conley, same thing. Like he got his all-star. No one will care. So I think 2.5 is an interesting number. Like Vic was 2. Vic was 2, and so he would have been under. But if you had pegged it to me after his first season with the Pacers, which is a little unfair because he already had won, I totally would have said over. Like the NBA can change so fast. He was also only with the Pacers for, 4 seasons, so it's a little less. Where I agree with you that Haliburton, and barring the world's craziest trade or something falling into the Pacers' lap, should be with the Pacers for more seasons than Oladipo was. Restricted free agency will help them in that way. So 2.5 is like right on the line. That's why I came up with that. I think I agree with you that I would not be super confident in it being this season, but I would think it's possible maybe 2 seasons from now. In fact, how convenient, Tyler. Do you happen to know where the 2024 All-Star game is going to be hosted for the NBA by chance?
As of right now, it's in Indianapolis.
Yeah. As of right now, it is scheduled to be in Indy. So that could, if you're the Pacers, be perfect timing kind of stuff. Like a lot of the chatter around Donovan Mitchell not getting traded would be that Utah wants an all-star in their city when they host that game this coming season. Like that matters a lot to these owners for drumming up interest in the event when there's a local tie to it. So maybe that doesn't matter for the scope of our discussion. I just thought it was noteworthy and interesting. If he does get it in 2024 at his home city, that's got to be motivating right before he's either extended by then or being a restricted free agent, come back in the same city, try to do it again. I think I would put the number at 3 or 4 for his career. So I think that then it becomes, is he with the Pacers for a super long time, right? Like Mark Price, like a guy I've named earlier, who statistically a very good comparison. He was a 4-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA guy in his 12-year career. And most of that was with the Cavs. He was with the Cavs for 9 seasons. Like if you consider a similar trajectory statistically or success-wise, and the Cavs were pretty good for a lot of that stretch. In fact, basically pre-LeBron, the best stretch of Cavaliers basketball ever. It's plausible that he could get that 3 or 4 level that Mark Price reached. And I know that may not be everybody's favorite comparison ever, but statistically, it is maybe to me the best one for young careers. So I think if you made me put a number on it, I would say 3, but it is possible to go higher. And a lot of the question I proposed to you depends on how long he stays with Indiana.
Yeah, and again, it's like right now, it kind of projects out to where he wants to be here. And of course, as you said, restricted free agency, which Pacers didn't really like how that worked about a couple of weeks ago, but they're going to love it here in a few years probably.
Right. They're going to love it for him, for Duarte, for Mathurin.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be big fans.
Yeah, I'm just kind of envisioning an 8 to 10 year stretch of Haliburton being here, and I think it's probably a good bet that in about half of his seasons, I think he's going to be an all-star. You're going to have probably the occasional, maybe even minor injuries, hopefully nothing too serious. But if he misses some time in the first half of a year, or first 75% of a year, I should say, before the all-star game. So you're going to have maybe some of that takes place. And then I'm going to be interested to see in a few years, assuming the Pacers build, and if they do, in fact, become a good team, what does that do to his numbers? Obviously, it can't hurt when you're the point guard of a good team. But there's obviously a ton of factors and a bunch of good rookies coming up. But I would say 3 or 4 is probably a good idea. Just to be, for the sake of being different, I'll say 4.
Yeah, sometimes when you say a second year player who's never been an all-star going, I think he's going to be a multi-time all-star, feels like, Pacers colored glasses or over the top to me. But with Haliburton, I feel different about it. One, because I'm super high on him and his skill set in general. But 2, because, and I think that's why I highlighted this right at the start, like his combo of skills is like 10 players ever have reached those statistical thresholds. There's a reason that he's really talented, and the Pacers were like, hey, this is a guy we really want at the trade deadline last year, because pass first point guards like that who can really shoot it and still score themselves, and that is such a unique player archetype. It's very unusual and rare. Is it necessarily a superstar archetype? No, but is it an all-star type that if you get other good pieces around him can be a part of a very good team? I absolutely think so, and that's why I put the number at 3. But 4, look at you. You're higher on him than me all of a sudden, so I will walk back my optimism. Anything to add to these discussions?
I'm just excited to watch him play. We're lucky that getting to go to the home games and cover the team, to have something to look forward to that's something to, I guess, that is bring some excitement. There's a lot of stories that'll be there. And so even if the team is not great, which we'll see if they make any other moves until then, but whether they do or not, he's going to be a fun one to cover. And I think Pacer fans are lucky that he's here.
He'll be fun to cover. His personality is a blast. His pass-first style will make others fun to cover. Duarte will get good touches in the right spots. Ben Mathurin will get good touches in the right spots. Whoever's on the team, that will be the case. Tyler, thank you for the time. Where can people follow you and your work covering the Pacers, the Hoosiers, the Cubs on occasion, and everything else in between?
Main place is my Twitter account, TylerSmith_ISL, and a lot of stories on IndySportsLegends.com and the Journal Review paper out of Crawfordsville.
Crawfordsville's the place to go for the paper version of Tyler Smith's coverage. And now that Ayton's done, there's not a lot of free agency stuff for us to talk about. So a lot more basketball-esque coverage coming here on Locked On Pacers. I want to talk about the Athletics NBA tiers thing that they did. Haliburton was the only Pacer in it, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. Will the Pacers win more games than last year? Some what ifs, and hopefully having some players on this show. I think it'll be 4 days a week for August because there is nothing happening in the NBA. Obviously, we'll change that if something big happens on the Pacers front. We'll jump right back into 5 a week in September as the season ramps up and preseason begins. Tyler, thank you for the time. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.